the night of Tuesday, the 14th of July, into Wednesday, the 15th of July, 2026. The Mont Blanc Massif, the French side, above 3,300 meters. This is where the normal route runs, the main line of ascent, the one almost everybody here follows. It climbs from the Tête Rousse Hut, 3,167 meters, to the Goûter Hut, 3,835 meters. Between them, the trail runs straight into a narrow gully that slices the flank of the Aiguille du Goûter from top to bottom. That gully has to be crossed on foot. The stretch is about 100 meters. A steel cable is strung across it, from one edge to the other. There is no going higher, no going lower, no way around. There is only one trail here. 20,000 people a year who head for the summit from this side put their feet on the very same stones. A rope team of 3 is moving across the couloir. Leading it is Pavel Žofka, a Czech mountain guide with an international IFMGA license. With him, 2 clients. They are doing everything the way it is supposed to be done. The day before, they climbed only as far as Tête Rousse and spent the night there, so that in the morning they would start out from right below the gully instead of grinding up to it from far down the valley. They set off in the dark, in the hours when the frost still holds the slope together. From the outside it can look like haste, but for this place in summer nobody has come up with anything more careful. That is how everyone moves here, everyone for whom these mountains are a job. Theirs is not the only rope team on the trail in the dark. That is simply how the whole schedule on Mont Blanc works. Departures are spaced out by minutes, and a chain of headlamps crawls upward, some a little ahead, some a little behind, and all of them with the same task, to be on the far side of the gully as fast as possible. And at 2:30 in the morning, the slope above them lets go of its rock. Zofka is 57. He had crossed this gully dozens of times, there and back, summer after summer. Mont Blanc was never a dream for him, and never a one-off project. It stood in his working calendar as one plain line among other summer outings. He knew this place the way only a man can know it who leads other people through it, people who have handed him their lives. To understand what happened that night, you have to come at it from 2 sides at once, who he was, and what the Grand Couloir actually is. It all begins a long way from the Alps, in an industrial city in the northeast of the Czech Republic. Pavel Žofka is born on the 14th of March, 1969, in Ostrava. This is a land of coal mines and metallurgy, a city of smoke and factory chimneys, where the horizon is blocked not by peaks but by cooling towers. But an hour's drive away, the Beskydy begin, low-wooded ridges on the border with Slovakia, and his parents take him there all year round. The family has an old wooden cottage in those hills. In winter, ski trips around Moravian and Slovak resorts. In summer, hiking. There is no moment when he discovers the mountains. They are simply part of the yearly calendar, like school or summer at grandmother's. At school he does a bit of everything: tennis, judo, basketball. Basketball sticks longer than the rest. He pursues it seriously until he is about 25. The future professional mountain guide comes to the mountains out of a team sports hall, not out of a children's climbing club. The turn comes at university. In Ostrava, he falls in with a crowd that brings him back to climbing, and he meets physical education teachers with whom he takes outdoor courses. And then comes something that, for the late 80s and early 90s, looks almost homemade. They build one of the first climbing walls right inside a student dormitory. Later, that grows into Elias, one of the first commercial climbing walls in the Czech Republic. But holds and technique are not yet mountaineering. Direction is set by people. The first man to turn him is Ludek Zahoransky, with his stories about expeditions. Many years later, looking back at that period, Zofka would say that Zahoransky had been the greatest of his heroes. The word hero here is not about starstruck admiration. In the Czech scene of that time, a man who had been to the big mountains brought back not only photographs, but the very idea that going there was possible at all. The second man appears later and changes not a hobby, but a profession. Dusan Stuklik shows him the work of a mountain guide as a trade, one with a school, exams, and a license. Both lines, the passion and the trade, run side by side for another decade and a half. And they converge at a single point on the map, in a French valley below Mont Blanc. The place he is heading toward has a biography of its own. People start writing it down, in roughly those same years. And not for the mountain as a whole, but for one short stretch of trail. The Grand Couloir du Goûter is a gully on the western flank of the Aiguille du Goûter. The trail crosses it at about 3,340 meters. It is not a summit, not a hard section, not a technical obstacle, just a piece of the way that has to be walked. Officially, the route it lies on is called the Royal Way, La Voie Royale. The name comes from the 19th century and means the main, classic line to the summit of Western Europe. But the couloir itself has other names. Climbers call it the bowling alley, for the way stones roll down the chute, picking up speed over hundreds of meters. The French press uses a second nickname, the Couloir of Death. From 1990 onward, the French Mountain Gendarmerie begins keeping a separate incident register here. Not for the whole massif, not for the route as a whole, for this one section specifically. 100 meters of trail get their own line in the statistics. The first big survey covers 21 years, from 1990 to 2011, 256 incidents, 291 people rescued, 180 injured, 74 who did not come back. The second survey, running to 2017, adds another 6 years to the picture. 347 rescue operations. They involved 387 people. 102 of those did not come back. Those affected came from 37 different nationalities. The couloir does not care where a person traveled in from, and only a few of them were walking with a professional guide. But more telling than the raw totals is the comparison. On average, since 1990, 3 or 4 people a summer do not come back from this one stretch. Across the whole of France in that same summer, mountaineering accounts for around 35 such cases. For the entire country, every massif, every route. Which means that a single 100-meter band of loose rock produces roughly a tenth of all French summer statistics. The register is started in exactly the years when Pavel Žofka first steps beyond the Czech crags. He had most likely never even heard that anyone in France was keeping such a ledger. His 90s are spent in the high Tatras. He skis lines there of the kind that in the Czech Republic and Slovakia are called extreme descents. Narrow couloirs, steep slopes, snow that holds exactly as long as it holds. In summer and the shoulder seasons, ski touring through the Tatra valleys, long days on skins. The second half of the year goes to rock. Czech sandstone is a school of its own. Soft rock, where you may not hammer in pitons or use metal in the cracks, where protection rests on knots of rope jammed into the seams. What you learn here is not so much strength as calculation. The price of a fall is far too high to climb on guesswork. Out of his own rock routes, he would later single out 2. One is Grana 1624 on Sulov in Slovakia. The other is the Return of the King in Labach, one of the Czech sandstone areas. He climbed them both back when climbing was not yet work, but simply what he felt like doing. By this point, his level is serious, up to grade 9 on the UIAA scale, the upper range for a man who is not a pure rock climber. Then the geography widens. Multi-pitches in the Alps and the Dolomites, long routes over many rope lengths, where technique is joined by route finding, weather, and knowing when to turn around. In those same seasons, he competes in ski mountaineering in the Czech Republic and abroad. And one trip that stands apart, Muztagh Ata, 7,546 meters, a mountain in Xinjiang on the Chinese side of the eastern Pamir, often confused with the Pakistani peaks, but this is a different range and a different country. Zofka climbs it and skis back down. It is his only confirmed 7,000er. There are no dates and the names of his partners are unknown. The sources preserve only the fact itself. Over a decade, this is what adds up. He does not turn into a pure rock climber or a pure skier. Skis and rock weigh the same for him. Exactly the combination the mountain guide profession asks for. By the early 2000s, he has everything except the piece of paper. He is 35, and at that age people do not usually go back to sitting at a desk. Around 2004, he applies to the mountain guide program. By then, he has more than 10 years in the mountains behind him, grade 9 on rock, ski descents in the Tatras, a 7,000er. But at the very first attempt, it turns out that this is not enough. The program of the IFMGA, the International Federation of Mountain Guides Associations, does not admit people on general impression. It has a formal list, a set number of ascents of a set difficultas, a set amount of ski experience, documented and verified. Some of those boxes are not ticked. Filling the gaps takes him 3 years, not months. 3 seasons of deliberate work aimed at one specific list of requirements. In 2007, he passes the entrance exams and is admitted. The course runs in Chamonix, where this profession was born and where its center still is. He trains alongside Branislav Adamek, known in the trade as Gabo. The training takes another 3 years. In 2010, he gets his license. That abbreviation carries weight. IFMGA is the highest international standard in the profession. There is nothing above it. A license like that gives you the right to guide clients anywhere in the world, on rock, on ice, on skis, in any season. You cannot get it remotely, buy it, or work around it. The road from decision to diploma took him 6 years. Zofka belongs to the 3rd generation of Czech guides trained in Chamonix. Generations here are counted quite literally. There are so few of these people that you could list them by name. Just how narrow that trade is shows in the numbers. At the start of 2025, there are 42 IFMGA licensed guides in the Czech Republic, plus 9 aspirants still in training. For comparison, by the end of that same year, the Czech Mountaineering Federation had more than 32,000 members. Both figures come from the same source, and the gap between them is almost 3 orders of magnitude, 40-odd people for an entire country. A profession that would fit on a single office floor, with a community of 30,000 around it. From 2010, Pavel Žofka is one of those 40, and he acquires a permanent summer workplace. The winter half of his year is spent at home, in the Czech Republic. He lives below Kralický Sněžník, on the border with Poland, and there, in Dolní Morava, he runs a shop and a ski touring rental. The shop grows straight out of his own skiing. The same boot, the same binding, the same skin he picks out for his clients are all standing in his own home. In summer, he goes to Chamonix for 10 seasons in a row, according to the available records. In his commercial offer, Mont Blanc is a standard program for 1 or 2 clients, an ordinary line item on a price list. Dates, duration, price, no expedition buildup, no one-time event. The program was live for the 2026 season as well, from June through September. Here it is worth counting something that usually goes uncounted. Climbing Mont Blanc by the normal route means going up to the Goûter hut and coming back down the same way. The couloir is crossed twice on every outing. Multiply that by the number of clients in a season, multiply it by 10 seasons, and you get a man for whom this gully is neither a landmark nor a test, but a section of the road to work. Besides Mont Blanc, his program included the Matterhorn. His requirements for a client were stated bluntly and precisely: 1,000 meters of climbing at grade 3+ on the UIAA scale, a grasp of the basics of belaying, ideally the ability to rappel. He would not take on an unfamiliar client straight away. First he took them out on something resembling the ascent ahead, and watched how they worked. Behind those requirements stands a man who is answerable for someone else's life, and does not want to be discovering another person's limits at 4,000 meters. About the work itself he spoke plainly. He drew no line between the job and his own passion. It is something that grips you and fills you up, and there is nothing there to be fussy about. He also had a second life away from the mountains. Graphic design and photography. First shooting sport and rock climbing, later less often. He published on a specialist outdoor portal and was a guest at the Obsery Festival. By the middle of the 20s, his year is mapped out far in advance. Winter below Kralický Sněžník, summer in Chamonix, Mont Blanc, and the Matterhorn on the price list. In that schedule, the Goûter couloir is an ordinary line, the section you cross in silence and fast. People hurry here not out of superstition. The hurrying has arithmetic behind it. The first thing a professional knows, rock does not fall at random. It has a cause and it has a timetable. The cause lies inside the rock. At these altitudes, the high walls of the Alps are held together by permafrost, ice that fills the cracks and keeps the shattered rock as one piece. The permafrost works like a natural cement. As long as it is in place, a broken slope behaves like a monolith. The Goûter zone sits right inside that belt. When the ice in the cracks thaws, the cement is gone. The rock stops holding on to itself, and pieces that have stood in place for thousands of years come away from the wall. Hence a chain of consequences that everyone in Chamonix understands. A heat wave, melting snow, glaciers, and permafrost. Collapses in places that had been relatively stable for decades. The most rock comes down during the period of active snowmelt. The second thing is the timetable. A study carried out by the Mountain Gendarmerie produced exact figures. 3/4 of all rockfall in the couloir occurs between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. That is, during the warmest part of the day. The most dangerous hour is from 11 to 12, on average one event every 17 minutes. 17 minutes. That is how much time passes between two rockfalls in the very hour when most tourist groups are approaching the crossing. Out of that data grows the main rule everyone here works by, without exception. You cross the couloir at night or in the early morning while the rock is still locked up by the cold. It is for the sake of that rule that the Tête Rousse Hut was built, so that people would not be climbing up toward the gully from the valley floor and arriving around midday. But there is a qualification to this picture that the professionals also know. A later study, built on seismic measurements from the 2019 season, paints a different picture. According to it, an event in the couloir occurs on average once every 37 minutes, and the peak of activity is shifted to the evening dies, between 7 and 8 o'clock. The least dangerous window for crossing is given there as the stretch from 9 to 10 in the morning. The data contradict each other. Different years, different measuring methods, different conclusions about which hour counts as safe. They agree on one thing. Night cold lowers the probability of rockfall, sometimes several times over, but it does not zero it out. Rock can come down at any hour of the day, and no study in 30 years has disproved that. Which leads to a simple question. If the risk cannot be removed by choosing the hour, can it be removed by anything else? Plenty of approaches have been tried over the years, and each one ran into a limit of its own. The most direct solution is to close the crossing. In the summer of 2015, during an extreme heat wave, the Goûter hut is temporarily shut by prefectural order. No hut, no point in going up. The measure works while it lasts, and it ends together with the heat wave. The second solution hangs in the couloir itself. A steel cable is strung across the crossing, and it would be logical to assume that it protects you from rock. It does not. The cable is meant as protection in avalanche conditions. Against rock coming down from above, it does nothing at all. And it creates a trap of its own. To clip into it, you have to stop and spend time standing directly beneath the very slope you want protection from. Experienced rope teams usually cross the couloir quickly and without clipping in, not out of contempt for technique, but because what counts most here is the amount of time spent below that slope. The third approach is to reduce the number of people. Since 2019, there has been a cap on the daily number of climbers. The specific quotas are not given in the available sources. The point is that the 20,000-strong summer flow on the French side is far from being made up of mountaineers alone. Many have minimal experience, and some have none at all. Just how dense that flow is can be seen in the 2019 season. Over the monitoring period, the sensors recorded 17,768 passages through the couloir and 2,648 seismic signals classified as rockfall. The fourth approach is observation. Between 2018 and 2020, seismic sensors, an automatic camera, and rock temperature sensors appear on the route. The state of the couloir is now visible in real time. The data help with warnings, but they do not hold back a single stone. The fifth and most radical option is to bypass the gully altogether. The Pitzel Foundation seriously studied an alternative line of ascent away from the couloir. The conclusion was not encouraging. The bypass is more dangerous than the existing trail. That leaves one last thing. In July of 2022, the guide companies of Saint-Gervais and Chamonix simply suspend the normal route, the very route Zofka works on. The professionals stop taking clients there. The suspension is temporary. When it ends, what remains available is exactly what people started with 30 years ago: observation, limiting the flow, and choosing the hour. And in the summer of 2026, one more factor is added to that set, one that had never before appeared on this scale. It all comes down to temperature. A series of heat waves passes over Central and Western Europe. They land on top of a poor winter, little snow fell, and by the start of summer, the mountains have no reserve left, of the kind that normally shields the ice from the sun. Glaciers and permafrost begin melting ahead of schedule. The result is visible on the routes. Where at this time of year there would be névé, dense, settled snow you walk on in crampons, bare ice and shifting rock are exposed instead. The trail the guides knew from past seasons stops being the same trail. The scale of it is captured most precisely by a single figure. The height of the 0-degree isotherm, the level above which the temperature stays below freezing, rises to 5,289 meters. That is higher than the summit of Mont Blanc, which means that on days like that, there is not one point in the whole massif where the frost holds. The Italians react first. The Courmayeur Society of Mountain Guides stops selling clients the ascent by the Italian classic route. The decision is taken in the week before the 15th of July. That is, before any tragedy, purely on the basis of the mountain's condition. The Society's president explains the reason without diplomacy. After the June heat, conditions deteriorated quickly. The glacier is cut through with crevasses, and finding a line through it has become difficult. He makes a point of stressing that there is no ban from the authorities. This is a decision by the guides themselves, people who work on these ascents and who have taken them out of their own programs. The Aosta Valley Mountain Guides Union backs its colleagues and recommends suspending outings. Recommends precisely. This is not an order, and alternative routes on the Italian side remain open. The French side takes a different line. The vice president of the Saint-Gervais Guide Company states on the 15th of July that on their side, ascents are running as normal, though he does not rule out that the temperature may force the same decision as in 2022. By mid-July, the mountain is split in two. One side has already been taken off sale. The other keeps working, by the normal route, through the Grand Couloir, and across the Alps in those same weeks. There is a chain of incidents with one shared mechanism. The count can start on the 2nd of July. On that day, 3 people do not come back in the Mont Blanc Massif, in 3 separate unconnected incidents. The gendarmerie works non-stop, 10 rescue operations in 24 hours, for a single day in a single massif that is an exceptional load, and in Chamonix, days like that are called black. The 7th of July, Liscam, a neighboring area of the Pennine Alps, the North Face. That morning, rockfall comes down at around 4,300 meters, and a 34-year-old Czech man does not come back from the mountain. The 12th of July, the Matterhorn, the Hernley Ridge, the classic route on one of the most recognizable summits in Europe. The altitude of the incident is about 4,030 meters. 2 people do not come back. Witnesses report rockfall, and the public prosecutor of the canton of Valais opens an investigation. A year earlier, on the 28th of July, 2025, a similar story unfolds a long way from the Alps, on Leila Peak in the Karakoram. There, on the descent, Laura Dahlmeier, a 2-time Olympic biathlon champion who had left the sport for the mountains, is caught by rockfall. Different countries, different ranges, different levels of preparation. One thing in common, in every case the cause was rock, not human error. By mid-July the authorities notice it too. The prefecture of Haute-Savoie issues a warning about the raised risk of rockfall linked to the heat and the drought. The document contains a direct appeal. Postpone, for now, any ascent by the normal route. The exact date of publication is not given in the available sources. All that is known is that the warning comes out a few days before the 15th of July. Legally, it changes nothing. A document like that closes nothing and turns nobody around. It only calls things by their names, and leaves the choice to those who have already arrived in the valley with a booked ascent. Ascents by the normal route continue. The huts are working, the beds are reserved, groups climb up to Tête Rousse on schedule. Among them is a party whose departure is set for the night of the 14th into the 15th. On the 14th of July, Pavel Žofka posts a video from an acclimatization outing on Gran Paradiso, 4,061 meters on the Italian side of the Alps. This is standard preparation before Mont Blanc. The body needs time to adjust to altitude before going higher. The rope team is him and 2 clients. All 3 are Czech. That same Tuesday evening, they sleep at the Tête Rousse Hut, 3,167 meters, below the couloir. Above it, only the crossing and the Goûter hut. The night at Tête Rousse follows the pattern common to everyone. Early lights out, up before dawn, breakfast in the dark, packing by headlamp. One thing is known for certain. In those hours, other groups were crossing the gully too. but the sources do not establish how close together those groups were moving, or who had passed the gully earlier. The claim that someone crossed the couloir a few minutes before the rockfall remains an interpretation, not testimony. At around 2:30 in the morning, the Chamonix Gendarmerie receives a report of a major rockfall in the Goûter couloir. The rockfall comes down onto the rope team. They are swept down the gully. The 57-year-old guide and one of the clients do not come back from the couloir. The third member of the party survives. Those two lines contain the whole couloir. No decision, no mistake, no hours-long fight for life. Seconds in which nobody has time to do anything at all. It happens in exactly that part of the day for which people here are woken in the middle of the night, in the coldest hour when the rock is locked in ice, when the rockfall statistics are at their lowest, when everything that can possibly be done to lower the risk has been done. Czech sources give the time as around 3 in the morning, a discrepancy of about half an hour with the French figures. The age of the second man, who did not come back, is given differently in different places. 49 according to the gendarmerie, 42 according to one local source. Up above, in the dark, the rock keeps coming. The rescuers will have to go inside that same gully, and that sets the pace of the entire operation. The gendarmerie calls the evacuation particularly delicate. Behind that dry wording stands something concrete. People position themselves beneath the same slope that released the rockfall a few hours earlier, and they stay there while the casualty is being brought up. According to the Chamonix Rescue Service, material kept coming down from above long after the event. The survivor is evacuated by helicopter to the hospital in Salanches down in the valley. According to French sources, he sustained light injuries. For a man swept down the couloir together with a rockfall, an exceptional outcome. A great deal about what happened is still not known. At which exact point of the 100-meter crossing the rockfall caught them, there is no data. Whether they were roped together at that moment, no data. Whether they were clipped into the steel cable, no data. The sources do not reconstruct this, and there is no sense in filling the gaps with guesswork. The cable, as already noted, does not stop rock coming from above on this crossing anyway. The name of the second man who did not come back has not been made public. The family made no statements, and there was no professional organization behind him to announce a loss. The professional community responds. On the 15th of July, the Czech Association of Mountain Guides publishes an obituary. There are almost no achievements in it, and no statistics at all. There is something else. For decades, he devoted himself to opening the way for others into the world of rock, glaciers, and high summits. And one separate line, that it is symbolic and bitter at the same time that his last steps led him onto a mountain he knew so well and to which he had a special attachment. The association's chairman confirms the identity and immediately closes the subject of details. Yes, this is about Pavel Žofka, and nothing further will be published out of respect for the families. Gabo Adamek, with whom he went through the Chamonix course 15 years earlier, speaks about him briefly and without grand words. A great guy, a great guide, always ready to help and to give advice. Lucy Hrstkova-Pashanova, a former alpine ski racer, a 3-time Olympian who moved into climbing and ski mountaineering after her racing career, writes that she lived through her most beautiful moments in the mountains with him, and she adds that now he will be belaying her from above. In a trade this small, nobody is ever merely a colleague to anybody. Every loss here is personal. Beyond that narrow circle, the conversation is no longer about the man. The argument comes down to one question. With the mountain in this state, is it still a place you can work, or is it not anymore? Gabo Adamek answers it as a practitioner, without euphemism. The stronger the heat before the season, and the more permafrost it managed to melt, the more rock comes down. There is no reproach to anyone in his words, and no excuse either, only the state of the mountain that everybody was working in. From physics, the matter moves quickly to the season's schedule. The Chamonix guides dropped the Goûter the day after the incident. On the 17th of July, the Saint-Gervais Guide Company also suspends the route. On the 15th of July, it had reported normal operations. Over those 2 days, the mountain changed, and the decision changed along with it. One more version went around the press, that some of the Chamonix guides had already been refusing to take clients up before it happened. That thread contradicts other sources and is not confirmed. Let us leave it where it belongs, among the unverified. The mayor of Saint-Gervais, the commune whose territory the route lies in, calls on climbers to take personal responsibility, and does not rule out closing the Goûter hut. As of the 16th of July, the Czech Association of Mountain Guides had issued no new recommendations. The route is under French jurisdiction, and the decisions about it are taken there. The outcome of the French investigation has not been published as this material is being prepared. The date of the memorial service and commemorative events is unknown. No official closure of the route followed from the French authorities. The circle closes where it began. The Grand Couloir remains the only way through on the normal route from the French side. Nobody is going to go around it. That line was assessed, and the verdict was that it is worse. The cable hangs where it always hung, but it is not about rock. As for the hour at which the crossing is guaranteed, no piece of research has ever named one. What remains is 100 meters of crumbling slope, crossed twice on every ascent, up and back. The flow through it has not stopped. People go on booking the huts, climbing to Tête Rousse and setting off before dawn, because from this side, there is no other way to reach the highest point in Western Europe. A man who knew this gully better than almost anyone who walks it did that night exactly what one is supposed to do, and did nothing beyond it. It was not enough. The question of whether this crossing should exist in its present form remains open, and every summer that follows asks it again.